как-то для себя выделить. Yes, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Welcome to our next class. And I'm really happy to see you today. I have a lot to share with you. And I also have got a question because all of a sudden, so today we have the 19th lesson out of 36. Actually, that means that we are well above or well after the middle of the course, and I have suddenly found out that we have one extra class which I haven't really planned. That's why there is a question. My dear colleagues, would you like me also after TOEFL to tell you? So you are going to have a choice. Either about SAT or GRE or verbal section of GMAT exam, so another collection of American university exams, because SAT, that is a test in English and maths. Well, you may say that is like Russian ЕГЭ to a certain extent, and students needed to apply to university. Also, they have got SAT subject tests, so that might be of some interest. However, statistically speaking, only 1% of Russian school leavers even think about taking them and studying somewhere. So it's not exactly a kind of test that you are likely to come across very often. So, however, it's interesting in respect that a student or an applicant like really requires 40,000 units of vocabulary, at least passive vocabulary, to take it, to pass it and to take it without great shock. GRE is pretty much the same, and verbal GMAT, it's one part of test which students need to apply to lots of business programs, business schools, MBA programs. So we may have a look at that because some of the questions there are just of maybe of high interest to you as teachers. Another option is I may choose another extra Russian Olympiad because the course was going to be concentrating around ВСЕС, высшая проба, Санкт-Петербургская государственная, Евразийская лингвистическая олимпиады, естественно, Олимпиада МГУ, Покори Воробьевы горы, but we also may take something less usual. It might be kind of interesting. For example, Olympiada Ranhis. It's a tricky one. Yes, it is. And have a look at this one. So please give it a thought and let me know which one you would personally prefer. And so I will reserve one class for that. So, I'm not being very polite today. My dear colleagues, how are you? I was told on Thursday by my happy students at Foxford that there is a spring break at schools starting either yesterday or today. So I wonder, how are you doing? What kind of spring holiday plans have you made? Anything fun? Irina, glad to hear that. That's wonderful. Okay, at last woken up after the winter, and uh, well, I seem to be getting to sleep, I'm afraid. Maybe it's because of St. Petersburg weather. Though we finally do have a promise of spring, so I hope that it's going to be continuing. Great. That's great. So, TOEFL. First of all, my dear colleagues, I would like to tell you that usually we take TOEFL, and by the way, many students do it as well, as a kind of like one exam. Olympiads, if possible. Okay, Larissa, thank you for the choice. Yes, of course, no problem. That is just an extra thing, and so Russian exams are Olympiads. Got it. Let's go for that. Yes, colleagues, if you vote for the same thing, just you can like the messages and I will see your choice. So, TOEFL is not one exam, it's a family of exams. It's an exam founded, distributed, issued, and also assessed by an independent body in America. So that is well, shall I say actually a company, or they say it is like an exam community of raters and also of assessors and people who compile the exam, which is totally independent from any educational institution. They do research on their own as such, they compile exams on their own, and so as a result, as well as, by the way, SAT and other exams, the applicants have to apply to an independent institution, come to authorized centers, which are always connected with one of educational representations in different countries, American one, so it can be either an educational community or information center, and take the exam. So why is that this exam needed and required? As well as IELTS, however, if you're applying for an American university, IELTS will be maybe the second or the third choice. TOEFL is the first. It is required from the students who haven't had previous experience of studying in American institutions. By the way, and do not, of course, do not hold English language country citizenship. So TOEFL is not only for Russian students, it would be the same for German, French, Italian, Spanish, Brazilian, Mexican, whatever not, if they choose to study in America. So that is university level exam. To separate it from language programs, English language camps, projects, research projects, and so on and so forth, TOEFL divided into several subtypes of exams, if I may say so. So the main one right now is the TOEFL IBT test. IBT means that it is internet-based test as opposed to paper-based test, which is right now taken and is possible only in 2% of locations of admission centers. That means if there is no reliable internet connection or there is no or there are some other limitations for administering this test. For example, no computer class, very remote area, then students may take paper-based test. And if you are specifically interested in difficult grammar and in extra practice for your students at upper intermediate advanced level, I would advise looking at TOEFL paper-based format before 2015, so unrevised paper-based TOEFL. Because what they have got there, they have got a brilliant grammar. We will be talking about that once again when we will be talking about FSERES. However, I will let you know about it now since you have the whole brilliant holiday week ahead of you and may have some time to have a look at their papers. So they have absolutely brilliant section where in longer sentences students have to choose the part which is not correct and will have to find the right explanation why they believe there was or there wasn't a grammar mistake. Probably one of the best things to summarize grammar at difficult levels, at advanced level, at upper intermediate level, though they concentrate on grammar for B1, B2, and sometimes for C1 with linkers. Just the format is highly unusual and requires lots of thinking from students. And the second thing which I would like you really to have a look at, we will be talking about that next time, and while we will be talking about FSERES, are TOEFL paper-based old formats, integrated listening, reading, and writing. So I will return to that question a bit later because that is a format which is used right now at FSERES. So TOEFL stopped using this particular one, FSERES has taken it up. So generally we will be talking mostly right now about the TOEFL IBT test because it is exactly the one that you may at some point have to prepare your students for, as it is taken at least by 100,000 students yearly. Well, some of them have to come from Russia, you know. And that is the most widespread one. And also at the same time, some materials from it can be taken for very good everyday English practice, especially so-called American English practice. Then the TOEFL hello, Любовь, join in. The TOEFL ITP tests, they are administered to those students who come to America for language programs. They are divided in two levels for students from elementary to intermediate, and from intermediate to upper intermediate or advanced level. Depending on the program, generally it's a very short test compared to any other exam because it lasts for something like 1 hour 10 minutes, 1 hour 20 minutes, everything is included. However, once again, it boasts a variety of integrated tasks. So what is that, an integrated task? We kind of got used to the fact that we test reading, listening, speaking, and writing separately. So you will have one paper for reading where a student has to read and then answer the questions. So that's the usual way we got used to. what TOEFL generally does and what may be great, however, exceptionally difficult for many students. So, at integrated reading and listening, for example, you will have an extract from a lecture, which you will have to read. It's going to be not very big one, something like 3 paragraphs. Then you will have either a conversation or another lecture on the same subject. So they are going to be connected by subject. And then there is a variety of tasks available. In all TOEFL format, what you will have? You will have comprehension questions based both on the text and the lecture. For example, you will have to decide or actually mark which points were mentioned only in the lecture, which points were mentioned in the text, and which points were mentioned in both or not mentioned at all. So generally you will have something like a comprehension exercise in general. Or you may have to explain some of the points. For example, here you will have a concept. And here you will have some examples or explanation of these ideas. And you will have to answer comprehension question based on both. Usually multiple choice question. Like, is it true that that means that? Or this example explains and so on. So it can be comprehension question. The second point can be totally different. So you read the text, you listen to conversation or an extract from a lecture, and then you have to explain, for example, how the listening part adds up to what was in the text, or which parts in the listening part contradict the information in the text. Or, for example, there was a problem and solution, and you will have to explain which solutions were suggested to the problem, why, and which one you believe is the most effective one. So, kind of explanation or kind of speaking answer, which is, by the way, very usual for academic life, because what students generally do at university or college, they go to the library, they read some books, or they do research on the internet, then they come to lecture, seminar, to a discussion class, they cover all the material, and then they have to form their own opinion and somehow express it. So that's a bit of a model for that, very contracted and limited in time, however still very much real life based. And generally the same with writing. When you have to read the text on the topic, you have to listen to something, and then you have to summarize what these extracts have in common, or vice versa, which points were not mentioned and why, classify information somehow, and so on and so forth. So generally it's not exactly an essay, it's more like a summary of what you have just read and listened. So that's what is the exceptionally specific about TOEFL, and something that students definitely have problems with, especially taking into account the format of IBT test itself. We'll return to that. Also, recently, TOEFL family came with a young student series. So, junior test for middle school to early high school level language programs 11 plus. And they are again integrated. They are, shall I say, hello Maria, join in. Shall I say that to a certain extent they are right now competitive to and comparative to Cambridge exam suite, making the exam area mm, well versatile, if I may say so, because both TOEFL Junior and TOEFL Primary they suggest again both independent and integrated tasks for younger students to check their English speaking English skills and to work on them. However, in TOEFL format with American ways of spelling, of pronunciation, of vocabulary, grammar. I found those tests mm, well, yeah, I would say interesting. However, to a certain extent, I'm terribly sorry. Americans seem to be a bit too academic with their testing system. And as soon as we get to the sample of the test, you will see what I mean. They're trying to make the tests look like, kind of like no nonsense guys. We're studying. You remember that. We are studying. While Cambridge Young Learners exams are extremely friendly to young learners, both in the look and format and so on and so forth, TOEFL ones are not that colorful. And they are not that imaginary even because at Cambridge Flyers you will have some nice stories about friendship, about family. Uh, Here they are a bit more academic. At the same time, they might be a good idea to have a look at and use if you are working with younger students and would like to make the program a bit changeable, challenging, and offer them a good way of showing off, especially with ambitious students who can do more or who think that they can do quite a lot. So TOEFL does provide great challenge, really. And they're also short compared to Cambridge exams. They generally take around 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, not more. All the skills are combined, so easy to assess, easy to check. All the papers, criteria, and so on, everything is available. The only thing, materials can be tricky to find. Possible, but very tricky. Because, Americans are the first ones against piracy. So they rarely post their materials anywhere for free. But let us concentrate on the TOEFL, which we will be talking about generally, and the one that we may need for our students in Russia, both at the level of high school and first years of university, because as I said, it is university level admissions for any year of university, uh, even for master programs, even for PhD programs. However, depending on the department, if it is linguistic department, they will require harder tests than TOEFL. So what are the requirements? Here down there you have a link where you or your students, if they are interested, can have a look at the long list of requirements of all the universities with all the options available. And for us, let's first have a look at the format because then we will have Ekaterina, join in, it's okay. Then you can have an idea how the requirements actually compare against all the tasks. Thank you for the link in the chat. So, with reading, listening, speaking, and writing, you can get up to 30 points. Unlike all other exams, the scoring system of TOEFL is rather difficult. You will see in a couple of minutes why. However, right now, if we have a look at the highest score that potentially our candidate may get, it is just 120 for IBT. And generally, university on average require from 69 to 110 points for TOEFL, from TOEFL applicants, which if you compare that against the total number, is not that big a deal. Because 70 gives you generally an intermediate student in all of the areas, while 110 is of course an advanced student, however still not to the point of being perfect. So what else is tricky actually about TOEFL? And why I said that the scoring system is exceptionally tricky. The point is that TOEFL is kind of unpredictable because you have a reading section and during your reading you may have either 3 or 4 texts with being given roughly 20 minutes for each of them and from 12 to 14 questions to each of them. So that generally means that the format every time varies and the timing varies all the time. So your student, when he or she comes to the exam, doesn't really know how long it will take. Reading can be from 60 to 90 minutes. Then it is followed straight away by listening, which also can vary in length. So you can have from 4 to 6 lecture parts and 2-3 conversations, each followed by, limited number of questions, thank goodness. However, that generally means that once again, your listening section can last from 60 to 90 minutes. That means that your student may generally spend if life is easy, then 2 hours concentrated on reading and listening, then have a tiny break of 10 minutes, not more. So just to get out of the room and come back again. And then the student has to go through speaking section. Well, this one is very limited in time, just 20 minutes. And in fact, it's not just 20 minutes. Each second of speaking section is timed and limited by seconds. And then finally, the student comes to writing, where they have approximately 50 minutes for writing an essay. So an exam as such, of course, you will never have like the longest reading and the longest listening in one go, but generally the length of the exam may vary from, well, as official site of TOEFL says, from 200 minutes to 250 minutes to complete, with just a 10-minute break in between. That means that, in fact, students have to be really ready and prepared for that. That is a tiresome experience. Another very specific thing about, well, it's not only format, it's also requirements, standard safety and standard identification procedure is rather long with TOEFL, which means that after you have applied for the exam and submitted all of your documents in electronic form together with your photographs, passports, and for people for underage people, also documents from their parents and caretakers. So TOEFL requires quite a pack of documents. On the day of the exam, you must be at least 30 minutes before the exam as such at the place. And when I'm saying you must be, I mean it, because a person who is something like 29 minutes before the exam may not be may not be admitted onto the area. And that's it. There will be no idea, no question about that. And once again, you will have to be with all the documents in original. You have those 30 minutes for signing confidentiality statement, reading, signing confidentiality statement, providing your signature, and being instructed on the procedure of the exam, on what you may do, what you may not do, and so on and so forth. The whole exam takes place in computer-equipped classroom where no reference materials, resources, no technical devices are allowed. So just like with Russian exam, of course, you are going to be taking away your phone. It will have to stay somewhere else, your watch, etc., etc., etc. If we are talking about Cambridge exams, usually it's not that grueling. You come with them and you leave them at the entrance. And usually it's fine. Or you just don't bring them with them. With TOEFL, you know, it reminds a bit of an airport procedure. And at the same time, all the writing things, notes, rulers, pens, pencils, highlighters, so anything that may be helpful to you in terms of making notes or whatever not, is not allowed. Which makes life of our students a bit more difficult, if I may say so, Because they have to rely on their memory quite a lot. They have to work with classifying information in their head and connecting the information in their head, especially as far as listening is concerned, because they simply will not have anything to mark it on, to leave it, to leave some kind of memory anchor for themselves. And we will come to listening section today, I hope, and you will actually see one difficulty about that. Because even when we were talking about IELTS and where you listen once, you actually have a chance to look at the questions before. Here, you don't. You first listen and then you answer the questions. So that is a kind of mental note-taking skills. It's not about all of the questions. So some of the very specific questions are replayed to the student the second time, like to concentrate. However, most of the questions you answer generally from your memory, and you have to retain them in your memory. At the same time, there is another great exam skill which TOEFL students will need. That is flexibility. Because if you notice that 3 to 4 texts, it's okay. They're huge with 12, 14 questions after each of the text. Huge, long, lots of questions. However, with listening, you are very likely to have about 8. So 6, 8, some lectures and some conversations. Which require switching from one to another one and just completely forgetting about the previous one. So that is why what is really difficult for students, first of all, at TOEFL is the timing and the rules, the format. Like, first of all, you have to be there very early. You don't know before the exam starts how long you are going to be there. Between the parts, you have a tiny break. You generally have to concentrate and exercise your memory, short-term memory, to a higher significant level. And then, well, shall I say to top it all, just kind of like вишенка на торте, you are doing it all in a very specific format with a computer. Which means that you generally don't have a chance to return to the previous part. You don't really have much chance to, relax for a couple of seconds or minutes, and so on and so forth. And writing, which comes last, requires you to write 2 rather long essays in 50 minutes. Typing skills have to be perfect. So, yeah. From my point of view, currently, TOEFL is one of the most stressful exams in terms of format and in terms of requirements. Under such pressure, if you demonstrate this result out of 120, I should say that that's great. And if I would be inclined to believe that other formats require something like 3 months of training with a nice level of English. So when you really have to just revise everything and practice the format, so your student goes to the exam absolutely confidently, without any problems, and just passes the exam with flying colors. TOEFL, because of technicalities and because of stress level, has to be practiced longer. Yes, and unfortunately, that is why it's very difficult to do. That's probably one of the exams which is very difficult to do in groups, because each student will require some individual attention and practice of some individual things. At the same time, it's kind of, yeah, if you would like to be intimidating, domineering tyrant, then TOEFL to a certain extent is a great idea to exercise TOEFL preparation, a great idea to exercise these characteristics, because the exam is like that. And what is more, students will have to be ready that they are going to be videotaped. All the exam centers are equipped with surveillance, and the exam is being monitored by, as we usually say, специально обученными людьми. So during the exam, if students kind of behave, well, it's not like in a strange way, but in an unusual way or an irregular way, the exam center instruction is to lead the student out of the classroom. That's it. The test is going to be over. So to a certain extent, from my reflection, TOEFL is, a bit of an army test, army training test. And very often that is something that students need to know well before in advance, and they will need to cope with. So that's about our beautiful test. And let me change the battery. I will return to you just in 10 seconds, and we will go over the tasks and scoring system, and we'll have a look at reading and listening today. And next time we'll concentrate on writing and speaking. Just for us to have both a very good picture, very clear picture of what is required, which level is required, which points we will have to consider while preparing our students, and also which materials can be used for our other purposes as we prepare our students for other exams and Olympiads. So just 10 seconds. So I'm back. And talking about, by the way, so with technical skills, it's clear students need practice to read from the screen, to type very fast, and not to get nervous when they see some blinking, some ticking of the clock, and so on and so forth. One more skill, by the way, which may help our students, and that one I found very difficult to train in Russian students, especially in the category of going to master's degree somewhere abroad, is the skill. If anything goes wrong, raise your hand. Stop doing whatever you are doing and raise your hand. Because our students try to sort out the problem of quality of the screen, quality of image, quality of sound, working or not working earphones, working or not working keys on the keyboard by themselves, which is first of all strictly forbidden. So as soon as they try doing it, they are out of the exam. Uh, so, and secondly, usually, well, shall I say that it's a usual situation or it used to be a usual situation in many Russia-based exam centers, though, of course, equipment is checked regularly. It may be problematic. So computers are used for other purposes on everyday basis. You have around 20 or 30 students with you in the same class doing the same exam. So anything actually may happen. Don't try to sort it out by yourself. Raise your hand immediately. Low sound, loud sound, raise your hand. And then the timing of your exam is stopped. The invigilator knows which keys to press on the keyboard. You are given some time to, well, or some break while they replace the computer or they actually move you to another computer. So there can be two procedures, and so you don't waste your points, you don't waste your time of the test, and you don't risk being thrown out of the room with no possibility to return for several more sessions. And so you're absolutely right. We need stress management. We need computer literacy and being able actually to type very fast, or at least at good speed, because just you've got long sentences there and long texts. Being kind of ready for that day to comply with the rules, like knowing what to do, having all the structured answers in your head, when to come, which documents to bring, what to say, what to do if, when to do it, and so on and so forth. By the way, if a student requires a break during longer sessions, the timing of the test is not stopped. So I'm terribly sorry for saying so. However, during reading and listening section, going to the bathroom is not really a very good option, even if you desperately need it. So you will have to be making a choice, one or the other one. And also high flexibility and extended short-term memory span. That is why all the ideas of скорочтение, мнемотехники, классификация в голове, умение видеть структуру текста и держать ее в голове, that's exactly what students really have to master in TOEFL exam preparation. So generally, I would go for very strong learning strategies rather than anything else. Learning strategies come here first. That is why I would say that TOEFL is also a strategic example as well as IELTS. Because if you have got those things right, then life is relatively easy. And there is one more kind of nice survival skill. I'm not absolutely sure how to put it, but we'll get to that. So let's have a look at some of the parts first then. Reading. Reading as such, as I told you, 3 or 4 reading passages. Average length is about 700 words, so generally they take up to 2 A4 pages if printed out. That means the text is really big and good. The texts are taken from the first year university course books in different subjects, so you may generally get anything from mathematics to architecture. Very popular subjects include biology, anthropology, psychology. You don't need, as they say, subject knowledge to answer the questions because the questions are based on a different criteria. However, that's exactly the skill which I mean. Because when my student, let's have a look at that. Oh, shall I actually first open all the materials to you? Here they are. Please download them and then it's going to be a bit easier for you to have a look at. Now, at the same time, I'm showing you a sample of the text on the screen. So here it is. So that's that's a totally different skill. When you actually have a look at such a passage, one and almost, well, a page and a half long, when you read the title, one of the biggest tasks of a student not to start panicking. And generally, knowing that nothing over a thorough understanding of the text, nothing like that is required from a student. By the way, my dear colleagues, how do you feel about the topic? Do you remember IELTS? It's like pretty much the same thing, right? But if you look through that, the language is easier. But the tasks are different. So, in fact, for the student, looking at the screen and seeing such a absolutely unprecedented variety of topics, in fact, something that you never know what it's going to be about and so on and so forth, is quite a shock, usually. So, what kind of questions you generally can see in reading? Well, first of all, factual information. What you really have to do is read a sentence and there are going to be a question about the detail, like, is it true that? You read a sentence and decide yes or no. Or in which year was it? So some little point identifying it, finding in the big text. That's kind of easy if students don't really understand what the text is about. They have to more or less work with it as or for example, they don't know what is deer. Let deer be X. Then we will have that deer inhabit one sort of area and the second sort of area. Let those sorts of areas be 1 and 2, or A and B. And then there's going to be information about A, then there's going to be information about B. Main points about area A is 1, 2, 3. Main points about area B is 1, 2, 3. So that's something that you usually work with if you are working with TOEFL factual information and other questions. Then negative factual information. Once again, we are coming to the idea what's not in the text, what's not true. And then we are coming to a bit more unusual, a bit harder types of questions. Inference, something that is suggested but not explicitly stated. Why this one is different? And why this one is difficult? The point is that more often than not, with all the other tests and exams, you will have to tell your students that if it is not stated exactly in the text, even if you know that it is like that, you cannot answer in this way. So when we are talking about Cambridge exams, generally what we have to be saying to our students is that your background knowledge cannot be dragged into the exam room. Your ability to make deductions and conclusions, if it is about the meaning or some other things, may not be dragged to and may not be applicable to the texts unless it is said like that in the text. There is a word, there is a synonym, there is an idiom, there is an expression. You cannot answer it like that. It's totally different here. Inference is something that TOEFL, well, if not likes, applies quite a lot. So in each reading section, you will have at least 2 questions like that. I mean in the whole reading section, so at least for 2 texts. The same thing, rhetorical purpose. That is both linguistic rhetorical purpose and also meaning, context rhetorical purpose is another tricky thing for students because it's kind of like inference. Why did he say that? Why is he mentioning that? Why is he talking about? Is he trying to explain? Is he trying to apologize? Is he trying to give you an example? So, at TOEFL, students have to understand what is really written between the lines. And not only in reading, also in listening. Like, why did the professor mention that? Is he trying to emphasize on the idea? Is he trying to show his or her skepticism? Is he trying to criticize? And that is exactly the trick with TOEFL because, and that is what I love about TOEFL listening, by the way, they go very deep into the meaning, into the context, and they use a lot of expressions and idioms to show and express the meaning. In reading, it's not always like that. In listening, that's wonderfully done, and we'll have a look at that. Vocabulary. They do test vocabulary specifically. Both knowledge of the words, being able to identify the meaning or kind of like synonyms or close meaning from context, and also understanding the meaning of suffixes, prefixes, etc. If you have a look at the book, check your English vocabulary for TOEFL, and let us have a look at the contents. Just a second. Table of contents. You see, it's not so much broken into topics as it was, for example, for IELTS and for Cambridge exams. It's not actually broken into functions as it was with the IELTS and academic vocabulary. It follows totally different structure. If you have a look at that, what does it tell you as a teacher preparing for TOEFL exam? What kind of skills is this book trying to practice? Well, shall I say actually instill in our students? By the way, that book preparation would have been a great one had it been a level lower for listening for AG and YG. In many respects, there are some topics here which are good to be covered. Functions. Starting and stopping, task commands, comparing and contrasting, and then you've got something totally different. Where? Where is where? Yeah. So what in fact they try to achieve is something that is also practiced in American language arts and curriculum and English language curriculum. It's, for example, when you have an adjective, an American student is usually trained just to reel off 20 more adjectives with closest meaning. Or at least 5-7 words of the same word family. Or 10-15 words with the same suffix or the same prefix. So in fact, it is, yeah, nothing bad about that. And they are really trained into that. That's drilled into that. In editing, in speech making, in everything. Of course, organization of their speech and so on and so forth. However, presenting an argument and so on. However, those are very specific language skills. They are not really communicative skills. They are much more on theory level. And to a certain extent, by the way, they are a bit closer to our university system of education as far as languages are concerned. So it's kind of like Teor Grammatica. In a way, they have it. Yeah. That's more about linguistics. It's more about this approach. They do not look at communication as such. They look and at functioning in a language, at language functioning as well. So that's why they really may help you in many ways. I hope you will like them, some of them. So the tasks may be pretty much the same, like general vocabulary, and then you find lots of synonyms here. Oh, this one is tricky. Metaphors, and you have to decide which one is the odd one out, which one doesn't mean that. So generally, they're looking also at word associations, and they're looking at the idea that it's not like with other exams when you have to know the word, like know the word, to answer the question. You have to be able to deduct its meaning from many other factors, from surrounding factors. You have to generally know the area to which the word belongs. That's very specific skill. Very often we try to cover it with our topic-based approach. However, it's a skill and function-based approach, so it's a bit different. So, we are going on. I hope you will enjoy the book. Exactly. То есть называется «Я не знаю, откуда это слово, но я точно знаю, что оно с позитивной коннотацией». Или «Я знаю, что оно про работу». Или «Я понимаю, что оно у меня по суффиксу и по корню раскладывается на негативное значение». So it's a bit of a different thing. You don't really need to know the word. And then probably one more good point is, oh, you're welcome. Any books really, whatever I find. And then we are coming to some other things which are wonderful from my point of view, and that's what I love TOEFL for. References. Identifying the grammatical relationship between two words in the text. So which one is which? So this one describes what? It's an adjective which describes which noun. It's a pronoun which replaces which noun, part of a sentence, pronoun, etc. So trying to understand how the words are connected and related. That is why when we were talking about essay initially, I gave you TOEFL essays because they practice this referencing very well. Also, sentence simplification. Oh, that's another brilliant thing that only American exams test. Both TOEFL and SAT, they are very well familiar with the idea that students either use too many words, or too many ideas, and they overwrite sentences, thus making grammatical mistakes. And TOEFL is the one that sometimes focuses on it. Like you have to choose the variant of a sentence, and by the way, sentence is going to be completely grammatically correct, which expresses the same idea but in a better way, in a simpler way. It is something that in Russian we may call sometimes стилистическая ошибка. Или даже никак не называем, а идею, которую можно было бы выразить 10 словами, наш студент выражает 25, по дороге теряя какую-нибудь связь. TOEFL actually works with that. Inserting text is another beautiful thing that's very close to FCE, when you have to get the logic and structure of a paragraph and add idea after the sentence where it belongs. A prose summary, that is summarizing a necessary academic skill, necessary, I guess, not only for TOEFL, but also for Russian, by the way, Russian Olympiads as well. Russian Olympiads work with that, and that is why, by the way, we are having a look at TOEFL. Не так много, на самом деле, студентов, которые сдают TOEFL, но российские олимпиады, мне кажется, иногда слишком любят задания, которые похожи на TOEFL. Вот summary это оттуда. So when you have to choose the 3 most important ideas in the passage, with TOEFL it's almost always 3 ideas. They mean it. If not, they really have to, they will be explaining that. They have to put it very clearly to you. And with the Russian Olympiads, it's not the case. It can be up to 7 ideas. And then fill in the table. We already had a chance to look at that while we were talking about IELTS. So classify information, put it into categories, and complete a table organizing the main ideas, like advantages here, disadvantages here, main points, details, what is stated about one location, what is stated about another location. But if at IELTS you had to deal with very detailed information, like the exact name of a thing, or the exact name of a part of thing. Помните вот те веточки, да? Где надо было разобраться, вот какая конкретно часть веточки не была упомянута в основном предложении. IELTS is dealing with general ideas. So the student has to read the text and get some general understanding of it. However, it doesn't really require like a very specific understanding of each word and so on and so forth. However, what makes life of a student kind of difficult is the format once again. Because what your student will get at the test. You remember that the student is actually sitting in front of the computer screen, and at the very beginning, so the person will have that screen. TOEFL IBT test, then of course the date, and by the way, the picture of you in the corner of the screen for the whole duration of the test. Some students find it highly annoying, especially girls. So my recommendation to a student applying to take TOEFL is actually to choose a good picture. The one that they like. because yes, it may be very irritating having a look at yourself. By the way, almost always it is in the right upper corner, which is... Они экспериментировали на самом деле, это довольно забавная история. And TOEFL Exam Center was experimenting where they should place this picture of a student. And they were exploring all the ideas about it and so on and so forth. They were trying to make it a bit more invisible for the students, and finally they put it up there. Though statistically speaking, if you have ever been interested in marketing, or if you ever have a look at how you work with sites when you just open anything, the right upper corner is actually the first place most of us look at. Or letter Z, yes, Z in American. So it will be kind of like, and you get anchored there with your picture. So students have to be ready for that. And the thing is that this option, no matter how widespread TOEFL course books and TOEFL preparation books are, they are provided, of course, by the best American publishers. I would recommend Kaplan and Barron's. Kaplan and Barron's, and also McGraw-Hill. Longman was another one of European publishers which provided a very comprehensive guide to TOEFL and TOEFL preparation. Their software doesn't allow you to load your picture currently, and students sometimes get surprised and distracted, just like, oh, what is happening here? Nevertheless, so you see that. Then, blank screen, then the beginning of reading section. Americans are very particular about instructions. Each step is timed, limited, prescribed, and the point is that as soon as you open that reading section, so you are on that page, you've got a timer which starts counting the time. Silently, however, that's another point to get used to. Then, your students see the text which they can scroll down, and then they generally see the questions just as they are shown here. Exactly as they are shown here. So the text has ended, and then comes the first question. Each time you are going to be given again, unless it is general information, the exact passage, the exact piece where you need to do something, to look for information, to structure something, to answer the question. So on the screen you will have the extract from the text and the task. However, yes, you can return to the questions, but you cannot return to the complete text, which is kind of tricky. Sometimes it gets your ground from under your feet. So that is why, once again, just as with IELTS, I highly recommend my students to look through the text and structure the text in their head. They will need it for general understanding, for main idea questions. Since they are not allowed to write anything, and before they come to the main idea and general idea questions, they will have to look through some of the paragraphs in the text. I usually really ask them to form the summary and the structure of the text in their head. That's still an English course book text, which means that it is concentrating on one topic, making no more than 3 main points about it. That's the rule of TOEFL. Or there can be no more than 3 points for contrasting sides or comparing two things, two locations, two types of behavior, two different research papers, and so on and so forth. So it's limited, and they have to automatically deduct this information from any text. What helps here? Quite a lot. This returns us to something that we're going to be talking about while preparing for Olympiads. Listening to TED Talks and summarizing information from there. The purpose of this talk was the presenter wanted to do 1, 2, 3. The first one was supported by this example, the second one was supported by that detail, and the third point was supported by this comparison. The bottom line of the talk is, so start doing it automatically. However, this is a skill which has to be practiced only with academic and course book literature. Because that, or by the way, media. However, with Russian media, the point is it doesn't always work. It's kind of difficult. Вот академика Сахарова можно так читать, там действительно очень четкие идеи, можно суммировать, а часто закономерности русского текста таковы, что прочитав статью, ну, сложненько, скажем так. То есть статьи не хватает. Либо нужна вся целиком книга, как, например, с художественной литературой, для того, чтобы более или менее структурированно эту информацию как-то для себя выделить. С другой стороны, очень неплохо потренироваться на таких вещах, на учебниках истории, которые о каком-то событии. Неплохо потренироваться на таких вещах, как это ни странно, на учебниках физики. Тоже достаточно мило идет. Но, в принципе, это если студенту пока тяжело с TED Talks. TED Talks потом все-таки следующая история. Okay, so let's have a look at the questions themselves. Now answer the questions. Here you have the whole big paragraph, and according to paragraph 1, which of the following is true of the white-tailed deer? It is native to lowlands and marshes. It is more closely related to the mule deer of eastern Washington than to other types of deer. It has replaced the black-tailed deer in the open prairie. It no longer lives in a particular type of habitat that it once occupied. So, what kind of question is that? What type of question is that? If we return to types of questions, TOEFL ones, what is it asking us to do? Find the fact. Find the detailed fact. То есть, опять, на самом деле, я текст уже глазами пробежала. Дальше я читаю вопрос. С TOEFL варианты в вопросе никогда не будут расположены хронологически к тексту. Это можно просто принять за данность И, то есть, общая хронология вопросов есть, а вот ответы и варианты нет. Они будут разбросаны, и наоборот, порядок будет нарушен. И вот здесь я это вижу как раз. Two species of deer have been prevalent in the area, whatever, of Washington State, in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. And out of here, my dear colleagues, if I have two species of deer, какие варианты ответа, скорее всего, вам могут подойти? Okay, everyone is reading, okay, right? TOEFL в этом плане хитрый. Он почти никогда не идет прямо. Он почти всегда идет от обратного. И поэтому это забавно, но на самом деле вот варианты сравнения, как правило, вам здесь не очень будут подходить. Потому что TOEFL хочет, чтобы студент дочитал до самого конца, вник во все. Это факт. Вы правильно определили, что это факт. И это будет какой-то очень маленький специфический факт про один тип животного. То есть логика фактических вопросов такова, что они никогда не берут, ну хорошо, в 90% случаев они не берут сравнительную информацию, они берут информацию очень четко про одно животное. Но если вы посмотрите изначально, да, C вам не пойдет, да. А теперь давайте смотреть, а что пойдет? So, the other species, the Columbian white-tailed deer, его все-таки надо найти, in earlier times was common in the open prairie country. It is now restricted to the low, marshy islands and floodplains along the lower Columbia River. It is native to lowlands and marshes? Нет, потому что здесь ровно negative information. So, before that, earlier it was common in the open prairie country. Now something has changed. Про relation нам ничего не рассказали. Replaced, we don't know. Наоборот, он оттуда ушел. And it no longer lives in a particular type of habitat that it once occupied. Опять-таки, очень тойфеловский вопрос, потому что на самом деле вопрос lowlands and marshes тоже можно было ответ практически автоматически в TOEFL исключить. Он повторяет текст абзаца. Это очень редко будет про TOEFL. TOEFL любит, как и IELTS, перефраз. Not lowlands or marshes. Habitat. Particular type of habitat. А кроме того, TOEFL любит выводы. IELTS не любит выводы, а вот TOEFL любит. И на самом деле он от вас хочет не чтобы вы запомнили, и он любит generalized information, generalized meaning. После прочтения этого текста от студента хотят не чтобы он запомнил, что white-tailed deer was common in the open prairie country, but now lives in low marshy islands. Детали их не интересуют. Интересует общий вывод. Жил в одном месте, теперь в другом. Угу. То есть TOEFL почти всегда будет вытягивать на some sort of logical assumption and main ideas, even with facts. Good skill. However, if we are talking about other exams, so it's a good academic skill. That is why TOEFL materials may be generally taken for training such skills with students. Be able to summarize, to generalize information, be able to classify smaller details into bigger areas. However, if you are preparing for exams, generally we need totally the opposite type of skill. So, then your student has the next screen. To the next paragraph, your student will have two other questions. It can be inferred from the discussion in paragraph 2 that winter conditions cause some deer to hibernate, make food unavailable in the highlands for deer, make easier for deer to locate understory plants, prevent deer from migrating during the winter. So you have to look through the paragraph and make an inference. Like it's not going to be said completely and openly and explicitly. Again, it's kind of from details you get the main idea. Pure TOEFL. So here we have nearly any kind of plant in the forest understory can be part of a deer's diet. Where the forest, and then we go for winter finally. What keeps the black-tailed deer alive in the harsher seasons of plant decay and dormancy? One compensation for not hibernating is the built-in urge to migrate. So the idea is that they do not hibernate. Deer may move from high elevation browse area in summer down to the lowland areas in late fall. Even with snow on the ground, the high bushy understory is exposed. Also, snow and wind bring down leafy branches of cedar, hemlock, red alder, and other arboreal fodder. So, my dear colleagues, which one would you go for? So, cause some deer to hibernate? No, because here you have one compensation for not hibernating. And they have urge to migrate. So, no, so no D. It doesn't prevent them from migrating during the winter. Vice versa, they migrate. They move from high elevation to the lowland areas. That means that we are choosing between B and C. Смотрите, в тексте написано. Они не засыпают. Господа, а B или C? нам нужно сделать вывод. Зачем они у нас сверху перемещаются вниз? Потому что внизу еда есть, а наверху, по всей видимости, ее нету. И поэтому они идут вниз, где остается еда в этом самом understory plants. Это B. Да, потому что идея того, что они у нас летом этот understory не видят, а зимой вдруг начинают замечать, ну, у нас никакого такого нету, да, у нас нет такого, что они переключаются на ранее незначимую для них еду. Да, то есть, что зимой им становится она более значимой или более интересной. А вот информация о том, что они еды нет, но они не засыпают, они мигрируют. Почему мигрируют? Потому что в одном месте нет еды. Угу, да. And then, synonym, complete synonym. The word inhibits in the passage is closest to in meaning to. И вот здесь интересно, потому что очень часто TOEFL будет спрашивать непрямое значение слова. Либо даст вам такие интересные синонимы, как здесь. Consists of, combines, restricts, establishes. Let's have a look. Inhibits. We have the word. На экране компьютера оно всегда будет highlighted. Yes, absolutely. It restricts. Yeah. So inhibition is restriction. And where the forest inhibits the growth of grass and other meadow plants, the black-tailed deer browses on. Huckleberry salad dogwood. So inhibits is context, absolutely. То есть, если нельзя поесть одно, они переключаются на другое. Почему нельзя поесть? Потому что как-то это все, наоборот, ограничено. Consists of, combines, establishes дает вам позитивную идею, restricts negative idea. Just like here. Then, another one. Good one. The phrase in the same breath in the passage is closest in meaning to impatiently, humorously, continuously, immediately. And once again, you derive from the context that it actually is TOEFL is an ideal course book in a way. I mean, past papers or official guides and preparation guides for TOEFL are an ideal guide and course book for common idioms. And I mean it, not like dragged at random and classified idioms. Like, do you remember 20 idioms with colors? Do you remember 17 idioms with body? And so on and so forth. But real life, the ones that are used all the time by native speakers in everyday situations, in lots of contexts, and they concentrate on them. So another thing to like TOEFL for. I would be choosing between continuously and immediately. Why continuously? Which context? The early explorers and settlers told of abundant deer in the early 1800s, and yet, almost in the same breath, bemoan the lack of this succulent game animal. Immediately. То есть они сначала, соответственно, заявили одно и тут же жаловались. Да. And then you have some other great examples about, so you go chronologically, and before the next paragraph, you will have some more examples. The author tells the story of the explorers Lewis and Clark in paragraph 3 in order to illustrate which of the following points. Смотрите, какая классная штука. Да? То есть историю рассказал зачем? Что хочет с помощью этой истории продемонстрировать? TOEFL на самом деле гораздо больше, чем, например, IELTS упоминает британские места и так далее, international kinds of places, locations and so on. TOEFL очень часто упоминает факты из американской истории, например, того же Explorers Lewis and Clark, названия мест, all sorts of areas. С одной стороны, они никогда не бывают, то есть вот background knowledge никогда не бывает необходим в данной ситуации, чтобы реально справиться с экзаменом. С другой стороны, студентам я всегда на самом деле советую хотя бы бегло ознакомиться с географией и историей, особенно исследования и открытия Америки. Я имею в виду не Колумба, а именно экспедиции, революции, гражданская война и политическая система на всякий случай. То есть вот эти 4 аспекта очень важно, чтобы ребята себе хотя бы представляли и, натыкаясь на очередное название или имя, опять-таки была хотя бы какая-то ассоциация, откуда это, про что это. And then finally, according to paragraph 3, how had Fort Vancouver changed by the time David Douglas returned in 1832? In fact, once again, that's a fact from, and generally it's an easy one to find. The text is not extremely difficult. Well, what I really wanted to show you, because questions 7 and 8 are more or less pretty much of the same status as for other exams, like why does the author ask readers to recall the tale of the Columbian white-tailed deer in the discussion of changes in the wilderness landscape. И опять мы на самом деле говорим об очень живой reference. То есть только вспомню эту историю, как по-русски. And the phrase indefinite period in the passage is closest in meaning to a period. What I wanted us to have a look at is actually questions like 11. Have a look. So, which of the sentences below best expresses the essential information in the highlighted paragraph, in the highlighted sentence in paragraph 5? Incorrect choices change the meaning in important ways or leave out essential information. So that's a great task that TOEFL very often applies. Again, you have to paraphrase the information without losing important details. So here we've got the sentence. In addition to finding an increase of suitable browse, like huckleberry and vine maple, Arthur Einerson, long-time game biologist in the Pacific Northwest, found quality of browse in the open areas to be substantially more nutritive. So we have to decide which variant paraphrases the sentence most effectively. What would be your choice? So we have here our scientist, Arthur. Long-time familiarity with the Pacific Northwest helped him discover areas where deer had an increase in suitable browse. Again, the same scientists found that deforested feeding grounds provided deer with more and better food. Biologists like him believe it is important to find additional open areas with suitable browse for deer to inhabit. Olga, why? According to Einarsson, huckleberry and vine maple are examples of vegetation that may someday improve the nutrition of deer in the open areas of the Pacific Northwest. Шикарный вопрос. На самом деле, что студента надо научить делать? У нас есть... just like it, okay. У нас есть ученый. И он у нас с вами. То есть реально мы учим наших детей в данной ситуации выделять главное и детали. То есть у нас есть ученый, вот он. Мы смотрим на грамматику предложения. Да? И у нас есть in addition to finding, и он еще чего-то found. И он у нас сделал что-то одно, нашел, и что-то другое нашел. А то, что информация про этого ученого украшена цветочками, в данной ситуации это не важно. Предложение четко нам говорит: нашел это и нашел то. И поэтому и он у нас один. Совсем один. Да? И поэтому мы можем на самом деле брать только B. Потому что у нас есть, соответственно... ну и вот это больше имеет звездочек и важности, чем вот это. Да? Она еще и сравнивается. Found quality of browse in the open areas to be substantially more nutritive. Поэтому мы берем предложение, где он у нас один, и сравнивает две, и вторая оказывается лучше. То есть, опять-таки, мы вытащили это не на понимание, кто такой huckleberry и кто такой vine maple, а на понимание общей логики предложения. И это часто происходит с linkers в TOEFL. С этой точки зрения TOEFL Preparation Materials очень хорошо дают, и Kaplan, и Barron's особенно, они довольно долго концентрируются, там большие сеты на paraphrases с использованием различных видов сложных linkers. Они дают сложные предложения с несколькими деталями, которые нужно paraphrase, не потеряв смысла и использовав linkers. And then I also wanted to show you some more. Here you have got, look at the square, number 13. Look at the four squares that indicate where the following sentence can be added to the passage. Their food is available and accessible throughout the winter. So generally, you will have 4 variants where the student will put or may put this sentence. My question is, how do you feel? Where should it be? After which word? You have actually referencing there. Or Мгм. Я же сказала, что TOEFL, он изысканный, правильно? Он никогда не прямой. Это не IELTS. Помните, как легко было с IELTS? С IELTS было вообще великолепно. Там легко все находилось. То есть there нас явно относят к месту. Мгм. Да. Мгм. Lowland areas in late fall. Lowland areas in the late fall. У нас таких мест здесь на самом деле несколько. То есть первое место нам не подходит, потому что one compensation for not hibernating in the built is the built-in urge to migrate. У меня там вообще нет места. У меня там не к чему there привязать. Deer may move from high elevation browse areas in summer down to the lowland areas in late fall. Здесь логично привязать their food is available and accessible throughout the winter. Логично, у меня summer переместилась в late fall и переместилась в winter, а lowland заменились на there. Мгм. Even with snow on the ground, the high bushy understory is exposed. То есть я понимаю, что дальше там про еду будет. Ладно, там cedar, hammock, red alder, so on. Но я на всякий случай посмотрю на country. Хотя, честно сказать, зная TOEFL, я однозначно отмету при первом просмотре. То есть шансы, что они сделают вам однозначную связку, равны 0,01%. Ну вот, не про них. So the number of deer have fluctuated markedly since the entry of European into Puget Sound country. Я думаю, что там дальше не про еду, там будет про entry of European. The early explorers and settlers, там не про еду. Okay? So, kind of nice ones. And then finally, my dear colleagues, have a look. Finally, you come to question 14. You have gone through 13 questions, looking at all different paragraphs, etc., etc. You cannot return to the whole text. You can return to the questions, but not to the whole text. And at the very end, you have to actually make a brief summary of the passage. However, you have here an introductory sentence, and you have a choice of sentences, 6 of them, so half of them will not be long. You have to choose 3. Put them in whatever hierarchy you would like to. It doesn't really matter here. In order to complete the summary of the text. And the main ideas are not going to be written in an easy way. So once again, they are kind of paraphrased. Some linkers are added to alter a bit the meaning. However, you have to be able to recognize the main meaning. And what you really have to be able to do at the very beginning is to get this meaning from the text, summarize it for yourself, and then be able to match whether it's been said or it hasn't been said. Whether this one goes against and contradicts to a certain extent to what's been mentioned, or vice versa, it's pretty much the same. So, my dear colleagues, how do you feel about TOEFL reading? I know we generally just look through very briefly. I wanted to give you an overview of that. And after a tiny break, we will have a look at listening. Yeah, difficult. It is. It is. Uh, and tricky. You would better have keys. I haven't attached them, but I may. Okay, I next time I will I'll have it. Okay, challenging. Yes, it is. And mind you, the student has got only 20 minutes for that one. So bad is the best. Yeah. Which actually means that for 14 questions, you have pretty much like 1.5 minutes for the question, even less. That's another tricky side of TOEFL. No, when at IELTS you are given 60 minutes for 3 texts, you remember that you don't really have to read them. There is like almost nothing to read. Here you are generally have to distribute your time having 20 minutes for one text. Ну, это на самом деле американские экзамены. Вот TOEFL это определенная эссенция. Например, на SAT, GRE и на GMAT там еще жестче распределение времени. Там не больше 1 минуты на вопрос. То есть у вас будет текст, будет примерно, опять же, такой же, ну, он там будет разбит на несколько частей, но то есть у вас получится, что у вас 20 минут и 20 вопросов. Или даже 21 вопрос. При этом все оно будет не маленькое. Почему? То есть здесь понятно почему. Когда вы читаете, вернее, когда приходит студент в университет, опять-таки университет хочет знать, что он справится с тем объемом чтения, чисто физически он может читать на той скорости, что он сможет освоить список литературы, требуемый для изучения. На самом деле это было бы очень неплохо. Ну, понимаете, американцы в этом плане, в плане образования, они давным-давно все измерили, они давным-давно все посчитали. То есть там нет той истории, что выполнение домашнего задания может занять у студента непредсказуемое количество времени. Там это четко просчитано, сколько времени оно должно занять и сколько времени человек должен учиться в течение дня, сколько времени то, сё, пятое, десятое. Если он при этом выберет заниматься еще чем-то другим, ну окей, самосовершенствуйся. Делай это быстрее. Но там действительно все очень сильно прописано и просчитано в плане вопросов возможностей и перегрузов. И TOEFL это тоже учитывает. То есть скорость чтения студента, идущего в университет, должна быть достаточно высокой. Но опять-таки здесь не всегда скорость чтения, здесь именно скорость, я бы даже сказала следующее. Почему здесь, как правило, на TOEFL требуется высокий уровень владения языком? Для того, чтобы он мог в голове переварить эту не всегда легкую фразу и извлечь из нее как раз четкую структуру, четкую логику. А что конкретно имелось в виду простым языком? И вот это дополнительный навык, который мы по-хорошему должны бы, в принципе, тренировать в ребятах. Но на самом деле у нас, как правило, нет поводов этого делать. То есть TOEFL, он рассматривает язык только как инструмент. И с точки зрения TOEFL, и, кстати, с точки зрения SAT, там что язык математики, что английский язык. Они действительно концентрируются на digest a lot of data and make a decision very quickly. Но в TOEFL здесь добавляется, в SAT тоже добавляется some vocabulary, some grammar testing. However, again, you don't have to know the exact meaning. You have to survive in the text and be able to catch the idea rather than be very particular and accurate to as what is happening. So that's what TOEFL is about. And yes, it is tricky. It is actually one of the trickiest tests because it is not talking about the knowledge of language. It's talking about being able to use the language to acquire information and to solve problems. So in fact, it's not language test. As well as SAT. SAT is a scholastic aptitude test. Он ни разу не тестирует язык, он тестирует способность обучаться на языке и способность принимать на этом языке и выражать свое мнение и принимать решения. Поэтому это... Я надеюсь, что вам понравился TOEFL, если вы почувствуете, что у вас есть студент, или, может быть, самим захочется просто в это поиграть, или есть студент, с которым можно в это поиграть, посмотрите. Очень хорошо тренирует структурное мышление, логику и действительно скорость принятия решений. Особенно если по времени с этим развлекаться. So, my dear colleagues, let us take a little break. Let us take 7 minutes of a break, and then I will show you listening sections. I hope you will like them. Though, frankly speaking, they are challenging once again. And once again, they are challenging for several reasons. But let's first take a deserved cup of tea and coffee. We have just 6 minutes for that. So, в 6 часов 10 минут по Москве давайте вернемся обратно и что-нибудь хорошее послушаем. So, see you soon. So, let us get back and let us test our listening skills. So, what our students see on the screen of the computer after they have finished with reading. So, I would like to emphasize that there is no break. I mean that students go straight to listening. They see the directions. So they are instructed on what the text will look like. So when they will need to re-listen again, and so in some questions you will see that icon, this means that you will hear but not see the question. That means that in fact questions come in two variants. And the structure is like that. So first you listen with a beautiful picture chosen by TOEFL experts, which shows one person talking to another, one person talking to the audience, or two people talking to each other. You listen to, if it is a lecture, it's a 5-minute extract from a lecture. So it's not a very short one. Lectures come usually in several categories, so it can be either a professor, teacher telling something to the students in a structured way, and as you have already noticed, topics can vary. Biology, anthropology, arts, computer technologies, well, whatever, like really whatever. Music theories or language of something, they are not general topics as we had at other exams. They are subject-related topics with terms, with names of places, of locations, of animals, of specific food, of destinations, whatever, and people as well as that. They are with dates. And generally, you will have to track the history of events, the history record, like it happened earlier, it happened later. That is better, that is worse. Usually, you are not asked to remember these specific things, like the particular name for something. Nobody cares. However, you have to remember that the first thing was better than, for example, than the second one. So you listen, you kind of take mental notes, because hands are free, you're not allowed to do anything with that. And then appears the screen with the questions. You go through questions one by one. And when you click to the next question, there may be the icon listen. And the question is not going to be written. It's going to be told to you, asked, and you once again have to go through that and return to the next screen will be the question after the listening, and then you go through the whole thing. Either lectures, 5-minute lectures, they usually have 5-6 questions after them, one of which will have to be listened rather than read. And then you have a selection of shorter, something like 2-3-minute conversations between people. A lecture can come with teacher, professor, or it can be in a conversational way, dealing with several students. The hardest in this respect TOEFL task I have ever come across had a professor conducting a seminar with a group of, I counted 5 different students. And that was difficult to catch because you got distracted by the voices. However, the point is you don't need this information. That's extra information. So one more topic, one more skill that IELTS concentrates on is being able to brush aside all extra information, like different people were saying that. You have to break them into category, the professor and students. Or if there are just 3 people talking, then it may be important. However, kind of like you never know. And another one, the main ideas and some examples or stories. Here they are not applicable because everybody understands that in all probability, you will not remember everything. Key details will have to be remembered. So, let's try. Let's try both formats. One is going to be dealing with a lecture, a 5-minute piece of lecture. And the second one is going to be dealing with a little conversation. You have all 11 tracks which are required for this particular sample test in your downloaded materials. So you can then practice with the rest of them and tell me how it was going, how you felt about it. However, we are making a start. So this is here. Well, here you've got the question, the conversation first. So we are going to skip this one. I'm just going to show it to you because I have a specific task to you. So have a look. This is the picture which you are going to be on the screen of your computer, frozen, while the conversation goes. Then you will have a set of questions. Here is going to be 5 of them. You will not see them. However, have a look at the specific of the question. What does the woman need, or why does the woman need the woman's assistance? Why does the man need the woman's assistance? Sorry. What does the woman imply about critical reaction to the play Happy Strangers? What does the woman say about the experience seeing a performance of Happy Strangers when she was younger? And what is the man's attitude towards his current assignment? How would you characterize these questions? What do you really have to listen for? What does he need? What does she imply? What does she say? And what is his attitude? Summing it up in general, what's that about? So when I'm preparing my students, I will always show them the picture and tell them the topic, for example, of the dialogue, and ask them to prepare at least 2 questions which they expect to hear in the course of this dialogue. These questions are not exactly about details, are they? What are they about? How would you describe them? Or what is the focus on? Because even with what does she say in the answers you have, it was the first play she had seen performed professionally. She saw it against the wishes of her parents. She was surprised at how traditional the performance was. She had a variety of emotional reactions to the play. So what do you really have to listen to? Attitudes. Exactly. So the thing is that the exam kind of implies that you may not understand everything altogether. However, what you have to understand is how people feel, how people react, and what they actually mean in general terms. Once again, that is invaluable skill, in fact, invaluable life skill. And I wish it had been practiced more often with many of our English course books. Yeah. So it's not exactly tiny details, right? It's more like how they felt about that. Не что сказал, а как сказал. Говорить будут 2 минуты, а из этого вам нужно понять именно отношения. То есть на самом деле это именно, а что хотел, это чтобы именно избежать, что я прослушал лекцию, а что он хотел сказать, я не понял. Well, just a great life skill. And then you've got a separate screen with listen to task 2. The question is asked, and you will have to get into detail. So, the next one is a lecture in biology, and that is exactly the screen which you will see. In fact, this one and that the second one. So I'm not showing you the rest. I know that you can look. However, I would like you not to. So that's the screen which is in front of your eyes. We don't know what the questions are going to be about. And if I'm training my students, I would like them to predict in more detail the topic of the lecture. How do you feel, dear colleagues? Looking at displacement activity and biology, what is it going to be about? Yes, Anna, exactly. Because it's related not to one specific word. So it's a life skill. It's not language skill. And very often we don't really practice that enough. TOEFL allows to practice that. Quite a lot. They are always about that. All the emotional reactions, the whole variety of what people imply. And the ability to reflect it in your language. So, biology, a nice lady, and displacement activity. What's that about? Can you predict? Any ideas coming to you? We already know that TOEFL is tricky, so даже если мой студент не знает слово displacement, да, тут же мы будем разбираться. So, definitely it is a noun made out of verb, like govern, government. When you do something and you have a body or an activity made out of this verb with the suffix meant, because it's the meaning of the suffix. And this is a negative suffix. So, going by that, in all probability, the lady is going to be talking about place, biology and place. Biology and place, my associations are location, habitat, right? And if we are talking about displacement, I can deduct that it may be related to, yes, exactly, rather a change of places, right? Change of habitat, change of location. And probably it's not exactly a positive trend. So some species, because I'm talking about biology, right? Not geography, not ecology, not environmentalists, not fauna and botany, So some species are going to be moved, or they are forced to migrate. They are maybe pushed out of their location or habitat. However, that's an activity. Maybe she's going to be talking about other species which are influencing their, well, probably not partners, vice versa, due to survival reasons or due to lack of food. So generally, I can predict the whole area of ideas, the whole topic of ideas, not going very deep into biology. And then it's easier for me to have a look at what is going to be happening there. Frankly speaking, yes, maybe humans influence, so one species are displacing another species or whatever. So let's listen and let's first of all check our ideas. At the same time, what I would like you to tell me after we have listened to this track, which main ideas were mentioned there. That's the first one. And the second one, which question would you ask to this lecture? Okay, so ready, steady. Let's try to get into TOEFL's logic.
Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class. The class is discussing animal behavior.
Okay, the next kind of animal behavior I want to talk about might be familiar to you. You may have seen, for example, a bird that's in the middle of a mating ritual and suddenly it stops and preens.
If you have finished listening to the track, put a plus, please. And we definitely have something to discuss. Okay, wonderful. Great. My first question will be, what are the key points? What are the key points? Great, okay, so we're just simultaneously moving ahead, so, How would you summarize the logic of the lecture? Okay, it's animal behavior. In which situation? Irrelevant behavior in which situation? What should happen? Yes. Unusual behavior on an animal in certain situations. Changing of the behavior due to some factors. What are the factors? How many are there? Irrelevant behavior in a situation of conflicting triggers, right? So animal behaves illogically in a conflict of stimuli. I want to eat and I'm afraid. And then what do they do in this situation? Do they do whatever? Or there is a certain choice of behavior? By the way, yes, she's talking about the reasons behind it. They choose the third way. Yes. And are there many possibilities for the third way behavior, or these possibilities are limited? Is there a limitless, limited to which types of behavior? Grooming. Yeah. Grooming, sleeping, drinking. What are, okay. What kind of behaviors are they? So, yeah, they're actually natural for, right, okay. Biological necessities, compensating, right, okay. So they call them comforting, right? Comfort behaviors because they're kind of easy and natural. And what does the choice depend on? That was the third point. Do you remember that there have to be three main points? It's TOEFL. So the first one, animals behave unusually in a situation with a conflicting stimuli. Their behavior in a conflict of two stimuli, they choose the third behavior, which is comfort behavior, which is typical and usual for them in general and easy for them to do. And the choice of this behavior depends on the situation and the environment which is around them. 3. Okay. Then I've got a question. Why did we fail so tragically with trying to guess what the lecture is going to be about? What have we forgotten about? Yeah, I kind of led you the wrong way. I did it on purpose. What have we forgotten about? What have we done? Я сегодня, наверное, раз 4 или 5 повторила одну фразу. TOEFL is tricky. Помните? То есть TOEFL у нас есть на самом деле здесь connection with place. Но надо было копать глубже. Надо было смотреть на выражение out of place. The behavior which is out of place. Угу. Мы пошли прямым путем. TOEFL так почти никогда не ходит. Не в вопросах. Угу. И лингвистический TOEFL тоже так прямо не пойдет. Помните, там, когда из контекста мы выводили значение слов, там не было так, чтобы совсем вот прямые синонимы. Они близкие. Они где-то рядом. Они on the border. Помните, когда был referencing? Это не айлсовский referencing. Смотрю на последних два слова, ставлю к ним сразу где, что, как. Нет. TOEFL-овский referencing всегда будет требовать, да, будет требовать залезть глубже, залезть дальше. Угу. This по-другому, да. То есть, если... И вот этому надо учить студентов как раз, когда мы учим предполагать. Смотрим дальше. А еще что? А еще где встречается это слово? А где еще этот корень? А где эта приставка? А что она значит? И для этого при подготовке к TOEFL набирается огромнейший range of vocabulary, структурированный вот такими большими блоками. Синонимы, значение приставки, однокоренные слова, выражения с этим словом. Просто вот практически списками. Но это не только TOEFL, это фактически все американские выпускные университетские экзамены. Okay, let's have a look at the questions. No, let's have a look at the questions. So, and here we have disinhibition as another one. Now answer the questions. What is the lecture mainly about? Methods of observing unusual animal behavior. A theory about ways birds attract mates, ways animals behave when they have conflicting drives, and criteria for classifying animal behavior. Yeah. We had conflicting drives, ways animals behave when they have conflicting drives. Exactly, conflicts. And we remember that. Indicate whether each of the activities below describes a displacement activity. An animal attacks the ground instead of its enemy. An animal falls asleep in the middle of a mating ritual. An animal eats some food when confronted by its enemy. An animal takes a drink of water after grooming itself. So which ones are the example of displacement? What about the first one? Yes, no? An animal attacks the ground instead of its enemy. No. Это замещение, да? Она говорила об этом, там был пример как раз. The animal falls asleep in the middle of a mating ritual, да. Ага. An animal eats some food when confronted by its enemy. The second one is yes. Так, а пошел поел. О, увидел врага, пошел поел. Тоже, да. Тоже. А вот четвертое. An animal takes a drink of water after grooming itself. Что думаете про четвертое? Is it displacement activity or not? Нет. М-м. А, там нету conflicting triggers. Ему же никто не... у вас нет условия, что рядом с поилкой стоял враг. И он поэтому к нему не пошел пить, а пошел почистился, а потом уже решил, что все-таки не, надо попить. Да, то есть нет. Okay, so 2 and 3. Then, what does the professor say about disinhibition? It can prevent displacement activities from occurring. It can cause animals to act on more than one drive at a time. It is not useful for explaining many types of displacement activity. It is responsible for the appearance of seemingly irrelevant behavior. Помните, кто такой disinhibition? When you have two conflicting drives, то есть логика TOEFL, экзамен требует от вас, чтобы вы поняли основные понятия и могли подобрать под них определенные вещи. Two conflicting drives, and then the animal behaves and answers to the third drive. And that is called disinhibition. So what is that about? It's a D. It's a D. It is responsible for the appearance of seemingly irrelevant behavior. То есть у вас есть два конфликтующих поведения, он ни по одному из них не идет, он выбирает третье. It's irrelevant, yes, absolutely. А второй не подходит, потому что он бы у нас сразу оба сделал. Okay. Then, according to the lecture, what is one possible reason that displacement activities are often grooming behaviors? Grooming may cause an enemy or predators to be confused. Grooming is a convenient and accessible behavior. Grooming often occurs before eating and drinking. Grooming is a common social activity. Oh, I like the last one. I know it's not the answer. However, convenient and accessible behavior. Перышки всегда с собой. Можно приводить себя в порядок. Okay, and then, why does the professor mention the wood thrush? To contrast its displacement activities with those of other animal species. To explain that some animals display displacement activities other than grooming. To point out how displacement activities are influenced by the environment. To give an example of an animal that doesn't display displacement activities. И вот на этом пункте я, например, уже сейчас не вспомню про wood thrush. Но я помню 3 пункта, которые мы помним из этой лекции в принципе. Екатерина, yeah, it does work all the time. И я помню, что у меня они не говорили о том, что разные животные, разные активности используют. Не говорили они о том, что у меня одни животные используют активности, а другие нет. Но зато они точно говорили о том, что эти displacement activities are influenced by the environment. То есть на самом деле TOEFL, он всегда про main ideas. Если вы определили правильно main ideas, и вы их правильно суммировали, то ответ тоже будет верным. Ну и наконец, у нас есть 4 ответа, мы понятия не имеем, что же нас спросили. So let's listen. Let's have a listen to what it sounds like. The question itself. Ready? Steady. Yeah. Go. Track 4. Четвертый.
Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
So, what do you think another example of a displacement activity might be?
What does she mean when she's saying that's a very good suggestion, Carl, but that's called redirecting? So, which variant? She's impressed by how much the student knows about redirecting. She thinks it is time to move on to the next part of the lecture. The student's answer is not an example of a displacement activity. The student should suggest a different animal behavior to discuss next. C. То есть с какой целью она это сказала. И это важно на самом деле. Смотрите, это же проверка понимания на самом деле английского understatement и английской вежливости. Она есть в американских университетах в том числе. Профессор не скажет правильно sorry, you are wrong. Or sorry, that's not the right answer. She's going to say, that's very good, Carl, but it's called in a different way. А Карл при этом, или наш студент, который после TOEFL поедет учиться в университет, должен понять, что ему-то сказали, что то, что он описал, это другое определение и другой тип поведения. То есть он молодец с примером, но это пока не сюда. Exactly. And that's another TOEFL thing. That's what I love TOEFL listening for and listening practice exercises, especially Barron's, because Barron has got lots of them. As soon as I find the book, I suppose I just have to give it to you, actually, though it's heavy, really. Like, well, in reality, it looks like that thick. So TOEFL preparation guides are usually huge. Because they really teach you, they try to teach the students to understand the implied meaning, which they will have to understand if they go somewhere, if they live somewhere, and it's not going to be told directly. It's not an English way. And they will have to cope with that, to have to live with that, and not to get in trouble with that. So I hope you enjoyed that, though I understand that that may have been one of the first encounters with TOEFL. Please, I really hope that some of the materials will come in handy in preparing your students. Absolutely. Since, yeah. 610 pages, no problem. Exactly. They're usually huge ones. Yeah. Yes, they do. However, by the way, that's a huge difference between TOEFL and SAT answers. Составители учебников подготовки к TOEFL всегда сопровождают ответами и никогда не сопровождают объяснениями. А если захотите посмотреть на SAT, там у половины учебников нет ответов, как будто это супер очевидно, но у тех, у которых есть, там объяснения обычно на полстраницы. И вот к SAT там ответы всегда нужны, честно скажу. TOEFL, да, есть ответы, я в следующий раз ими поделюсь. Окей. Well, my dear colleagues, thank you very much for your enthusiasm and at the same your mood, your spirit, the atmosphere today. So I'm wishing you a great, a great week. I hope it's going to be holiday week for most of you, which you will devote to yourself, to breathe in and breathe out. And I'll see you next Saturday. We'll be very happy to do so. So thank you and goodbye. Yeah, look through the materials. They're great.
Центр онлайн-обучения «Фоксфорд». Курсы по всем предметам. Подготовка на разных уровнях. Лучшие преподаватели. Интерактивный учебник. Обучение онлайн. Поступай в «Фоксфорд». Начни обучение бесплатно.